Hey everybody, Joseph Rothschild here, aka Mono Bluetron, back with another episode of 10-Minute Testing. So, probably my favorite round from the regional I just went to was when a guy sat across from me and said, like it or not, this match is going to be over in 15 minutes. I didn't know exactly what he was talking about until he normal summoned Dark Lord Nurse Reficule and killed me in my standby phase. So today I decided I would look at an old strategy that has recently become a lot better, Nurse Burn. Let's jump into Deck Edit and see what we're playing. So here's the list we've settled on. Now the first thing you'll shit. I mean, I don't even know what to say here. The list really just explains itself. I guess the first thing you'll notice is that this isn't actually a budget deck at all. Despite its obvious similarities to Chain Burn, it does not sport the same low price tag. Nurse is actually a fairly expensive card. You are playing triple Pot of Desires, triple Card of Demise, triple Into the Void, and it's a well-known fact that Pot of Duality only works the way you want it if they're ultimate rare. Despite that, I think this strategy is actually pretty good. I guess I can talk a little about the individual card choices, though, you know, don't hold it against me if there's not anything particularly illuminating in them. We have 3 copies of Nurse Reficule, the Fallen One, re-errated to say Dark Lord Nurse Reficule, which allows us to play our second card, Banishment of the Dark Lords. We've got 3 of this sucker, despite the hard OPT, just because I want to see Nurse every single game. To make sure that we have the negative burn effect, we're also playing 3 Bad Reaction to Samachi. I know some people have put this card down to 2 or even 1, or in some cases even cut it, but I've yet to dislike it. It seems pretty good to have redundancy in a world where decks like ABC are really good at banishing 1 card a turn. You can get into some shenanigans with Samachi that you could not with Dark Lord Nurse, and, you know, that's just that. 1 copy of Upstart Goblin. In theory, this deals 1,000 points of damage to your opponent and draws you a card, but in practice, more often than not, it gains them life, which is not a big deal because you're just going to kill them with 3 gift cards anyway. 3 copies of Absolute King Backjack. This is an interesting include in the deck that I've liked very, very much. First and foremost, he's a target for Allure of Darkness, which is one of the better cards in the deck because it allows you to dump multiples of Nurse Reficule, but more importantly, his second effect, where he gets to activate it where he's in the graveyard, actually goes off a whole lot of the time. You're playing 3 Card of Demise, 3 Into the Void. I mean, he ends up in the graveyard more often than not. I am not ashamed to say it. Next, we have our draw spells, 3 Allure of Darkness. This allows us to get rid of multiples of either of our monsters. 3 Pot of Desires. It seems okay, I guess. 3 Card of Demise. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're going to type in the comments section the exact same thing you thought when you watched the Chain Burn deck all those months ago. Why are you playing a card that says your opponent can't take damage in a burn deck? Well, it's because we're going to kill them in their own standby phase, not on our turn. Come on. 3 copies of Into the Void. I mean, at this point, if you see Into the Void in a list, you can just assume that nothing fair is going to happen in this game. 3 copies of Pot of Duality. You don't have to special summon the Nurse, so this card seems alright. And finally, the best spell, 3 copies of Magical Mallet. Now, as anyone who has ever played Magical Explosion can tell you, Magical Mallet sucks ass. It's a terrible, awful card. But we're playing 3 copies of Banishment of the Dark Lords, 3 copies of Pot of Desires, 3 copies of Card of Demise, and 3 copies of Pot of Duality, all of which have a hard OPT clause. So routinely, we'll just draw a whole bunch of cards and end up with a hand of like 4 of these guys who have already been used, and we'll have to shuffle them back with Magical Mallet. It serves its purpose, and therefore we have to play it. Next, we have our trap lineup. 3 Gift Card, 3 Try and Guess, and 3 The Paths of Destiny. Gift Card is obviously the best of the 3. What a nuts card. Try and Guess is really good against anyone who is playing a good deck, and really bad against people who are also bad. The Paths of Destiny, also known as Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Burned, is just garbage. It's an awful card, but you gotta play what you gotta play. What it asks both players to do is toss a coin once. If you get heads, you gain 2,000 life points, and if you get tails, you lose 2,000 life points. Of course, if Bad Reaction or Nurse are out, you are always losing the flip, even if you gain 2,000. In the extra deck, we have all of the lowest star level fusion monsters possible. Now, it's important that you play specifically these. Other monsters will make your opponents think you're taking things too seriously. I particularly like that Zombie Warriors is Skeleton. Big fan of 2 different flaming 3-star fusion monsters. Really drive the point home there. And then, of course, Dragoness, the Wicked Knight, and the All-Star Fusionist. So let's jump into the games and see how quick we can lose them. So our first matchup is against Metaphos Yangzing, a deck that a lot of people thought would be really good coming into this format, and turned out to be only okay. However, it's been doing pretty well in the last couple of weeks, and I think it's getting tuned to the point where it will finally start putting up consistent results, probably in the next week or two. However, part of that tuning process probably involves playing 15 cards in the extra deck. We're playing against a guy named Player Sasuke 3000, and I fully expect him to be taking life points in increments of 3,000 this game. We've drawn pretty well. We have a Banishment, which represents a Nurse, which we will use right now. Get that sucker out. We have, what, 3,000 points of damage in our hand, so let's see if we can assemble the other ones. We're going to set 2 cards and play Card of Demise to draw 2. We draw a Pot of Desires, so those are both of those single turn activations. We draw an Into the Void and an Allure. Thank God we have this Absolute King Backjack. Going to go ahead and Into the Void our way into an empty Pot of Desires, pretty unfortunate, and Allure our way into another Allure and another Dark Monster, so let's just repeat that process. Into the Void again, and at this point we have it. We have 2 Try and Guess and a Paths of Destiny, that's 8,000. Let's do Icing on the Cake and Pot of Duality. We find ourselves a gift card. I'm like, sure, whatever. Let's go ahead and kill him in his draw step. So once his draw step starts, we're going to flip this Paths of Destiny. We're going to flip this Try and Guess. We're going to flip this gift card. So that should be it. Well, wait a minute. That wasn't 8,000 points of damage. Did I just lose the Try and Guess for calling Xyz? Oh. Oh. I thought he was bad for not playing 15 cards in the extra deck, but it turns out I played myself. You know, thankfully we have the other Try and Guess, so we'll just pick Synchro and beat him up. So our second matchup is up against Eidolon Artifacts. I'm really excited for Eidolon in a world where Zodiac is just going to butt blast everyone. I certainly can't wait to see if this other archetype is potentially viable. We've drawn okay. We have 2 copies of Banishment of the Dark Lords, which isn't great, an Allure without a target, but this Into the Void and this Pot of Desires are looking pretty sweet. So he's going to go first. He's going to go ahead and terraform his way into a, what is this, Reckless Magic Greed or whatever, and of course A-Lister comes out right now. So A-Lister is going to go ahead and get the fusion spell. He's going to activate the fusion spell in order to make the one that negates. So this is a problem for us because we are not great about playing around negation. He's going to go ahead and use the effect of the summoning magic and then of course set a couple cards. I'm a little concerned. So I have an idea. The way I think I'm going to play around this is by using Banishing the Dark Lords, baiting him into negating it, and then, of course, using the second copy of Banishing of the Dark Lords. Now, if the activation is negated, you can still use 2 of these cards that have a hard OPT clause. So we're going to go ahead and get our Nurse, normal summon her after we go ahead and Into the Void, set all 3 cards in our hand, and wouldn't you know it, there's Card of Demise. So we're going to flip up this Pot of Cupidity that draws us 2 cards. We set this Paths of Destiny, and we really don't need these extra cards in our hand. Like, this Magical Mallet is not great in multiples. We've already used Card of Demise this turn. We don't really need bad reaction because we have Nurse. So let's shuffle all those back, draw some more cards. We draw Backjack, which turns on our Allure of Darkness, which I'm feeling pretty good about. Unfortunately, because we've activated Card of Demise this turn, this upstart isn't as good as I want it to be. This Magical Mallet's all right here. We actually already have 8,000 Paths, Gift, and Gift, but this can negate a trap if he has a trap in his hand. So I figure it's probably better to try and sack into a 3rd gift card or something, and of course we sack into a Paths of Destiny. Not particularly lethal if he plays it correctly, but we do have the upstart to finish him off if in some wacky world we get another copy of Nurse Reficule or she lives to the end of the turn. So in his draw step, we're going to flip this Paths, we're going to flip this Paths, we're going to flip this card, and we're going to flip this card, and it turns out he actually just doesn't have any traps in his hand. So that's a sweet 50 million points of damage. So our last match is against ABC. I mean, we weren't going to be able to play all day without finding it eventually. We've opened all right. We have 2 copies of Banishment of the Dark Lords and a Magical Mallet to shuffle away any bad cards we draw off this Pot of Desires. Our opponent has opened all right as well. A Pot of Desires, a Union Hanger, and Sea Crush Wyvern basically ensure that he's going to have a really broken open. He's going to go ahead and use that Union Hanger to get, of course, the one, the only A, and then use that A along with Union Hanger to get B, make a Bujenti Tuskiomi, set a couple cards, and then use Tuskiomi's effect in order to draw a billion cards as well. So after that, he's going to Desires, draw some extra cards, and oh man, here comes the ABC. So that's, you know, that's the turn. And this is the reason that I include Bad Reaction to Samachi in my deck. Because at this point, he can just banish the absolute hell out of Nurse when she comes out. However, Bad Reaction at least allows us to play a little bit of like mind games, and maybe he targets something set on his next turn, and we can just flip up everything in response. We're going to start with a Casting Out of the Dark Lords in order to get Nurse. Then we're going to Pot of Desires right away, draw a bunch of cards, and then Magical Mallet all this garbage back into our deck. We're going to leave this Card of Demise because we haven't used it yet, and we draw Backjack, Nurse, Casting, Allure. So this Allure better be good. We draw a Bad Reaction and a Try and Guess, which is basically the best it could be. Let's go ahead and normal summon this Nurse now, pop the effect. He's going to banish it, of course, just like he should have. We're going to set everything we can and activate Card of Demise. That's going to draw us into another Try and Guess and another gift card. Just incredibly fair draws. So then we go to end step, and wouldn't you know it, he tags out. Oh, man, I understand why you do it, but I really disagree with your methods. So doing that means that he can't, get rid of Bad Reaction, and we're just going to blow the ever-loving hell out of him. 9,000 and a Bad Reaction to Samachi. Ugh. 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 So we're back with the deck. Are you proud of me, Dad? There's not a lot left to talk about in this strategy, but I will share my final thoughts. It felt very consistent, and I think if this deck was a little less expensive, we would probably see a lot more of it, especially at the local and regional level. I mean, as of now, it's kind of hard to justify paying so much money for a deck that plays so little Yu-Gi-Oh!, but the Yu-Gi-Oh! We did play sort of went our way 100% of the time. It felt like Magical Mallet really made hands that had things like 2 Nurse Reficule or a bunch of the hard OPT cards playable, or even game-winning. I really liked almost every single card in the main deck. Having said that, there are some changes we could probably make. This extra deck is definitely not optimal. I think it's probably worth putting a Winter Cherries package in the sideboard. She's a good target for Allure of Darkness, and while she doesn't particularly win us the game, she does constrain our opponent's plays enough that we might be able to naturally draw a couple extra combo pieces. We could remove, probably Dragoness is the first target for things like ABC Buster Dragon, Darklaw, Norden, all those broken guys. We also probably could still win some Try and Guesses even if we were playing like 1 or 2 Xyzs, so a Winter Cherries package feels pretty at home here. Other than that, I'm kind of at a loss for what to play. Maybe Prohibition in the side deck to shore out the one weakness that every deck has against Nurse Reficule? I don't know. Share your thoughts in the comments below if you have any ideas, but don't lose any sleep if you can't think up anything new for this incredibly innovative deck. So that's that. I hope you enjoyed watching the most interactive Yu-Gi-Oh! Played since Red Eye's FTK. I hope you enjoyed my strongly worded visual essay to Konami as to why errata should not happen, and most of all, I hope you just enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to give me a like, a comment, or a subscribe. It really helps me out. And if you want to see me play the decks I make on this show on stream, I'm on Twitch intermittently. The link is in the description. Finally, if there's a certain deck or archetype you want to see played on a future episode of this show, let me know in the comments section below, and I will do my best to accommodate you. Otherwise, I will see you on Tuesday.